Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first workshop for scholars. I'm really excited to bring in our folks from TransPerfect. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. The first workshop is going to be on how to search for a job when you don't know what you want to do. As I said, this is part of our larger series that we'll do. Our next one is going to be at the conference on October 27th. And Tavi and her team are going to be there facilitating a workshop on virtual interviews. So with that, Tavi, I'm going to just hand it over to you, and then I'll sit in the background, pretend like I'm a student too, right?
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Tavi. I've been with TransPerfect for 8 years. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. So I'm going to start out by sharing the question that I think is important for all of you to hear from our panelists. And what I asked our panelists was, how did you find your current job? And what about that process was unique? So I'm going to start out asking that question to Amanda, and I'll let her take it away. Amanda, we don't hear you. So all good. While you reconnect to audio, let's give you 2 seconds. Looks like it might be back.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we hear you now.
There you go.
Perfect timing. As that would happen, my phone just said goodbye and shut off. So try this again. I am Amanda Ryan. I have been in the TransPerfect family of companies for almost 13 years now, and she, hers are my pronouns. So I graduated college in 2007 with a sociology degree from the University of Georgia, go Bulldogs, and I was very uncertain what I wanted to do with it. I knew 2 things. I wanted a job that allowed me to travel, and I did not want to do a sales role. So I spent a lot of time kind of doing the traditional resume submitting, Indeed.com, Monster.com, those types of websites. To anything that kind of sounded remotely appealing, just reading through different job descriptions and job titles. But I definitely struggled with callbacks. 2007, 2008 was the last recession that we went through in the States. And I definitely kind of felt that pain in the process of just trying to find companies that were willing to meet with me and interview me. So I finally was kind of reaching a point of, okay, we're really needing to find a job at this point. And I turned to my network. So this is going to give away my age a little bit, but Facebook was about a year or 2 in at that point. But luckily my college was one of the first ones that was on it. So I had connected with quite a few people over those past couple of years. So I went through one by one, every person on my Facebook, looking at the companies that they worked at. And then I would go to the website for those companies and look at open jobs. So I actually found TransPerfect this way through a passing colleague of mine from college. And when you apply for a job, more times than not, it will ask if you have been referred by somebody that already works there. So I put her name down as a recommendation. I did let her know this after I applied, ask for forgiveness, not permission. Choose to do what you may with that. But she was wonderful and was really helpful in not only kind of vouching for my application, but she prepped me for the interview process. So it got my foot in the door, it got me in front of several people, and I was very prepared to have those conversations and ended up with a job offer. So I would say my 2 biggest takeaways from the job search and application side is, first and foremost, don't be afraid to use your network. Not only is it a great way to get a foot in the door and have somebody help you prepare for who you're going to meet and the questions that they're going to ask, but it can probably introduce you to companies and types of jobs that you would have never thought of or known existed based on the search parameters you put into a search engine. And secondarily, be careful coming from a place of no. So that first job, it was a sales job, the one thing I said that I didn't want to do. But by that point, I had student loans to pay. I was no closer to knowing what I really wanted to do. So I was like, I'm going to take this and see what happens. So 13 years later, I am still with TransPerfect, and I have evolved my career more times than I can count. And I did that as I figured out what I was good at and what I really wanted to do with my time, which I can tell you as you get older, some things become a little bit more clear. So taking that job I didn't necessarily want to begin with actually got me in with a company that taught me what I needed to learn about myself and really gave me the opportunities to build my own career path from there. So that is my story of finding a job.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. So Samir, can you share a little bit with us about your experience? Because I know you're coming to us from the UK, so a little bit different.
Sure. Yeah, different timing for sure. You guys are literally 5 hours behind us, I guess. Hi guys, my name is Samir. I hope you're doing well. And I want to take you back to my kind of TransPerfect journey, where it all began for me. So obviously, I've been with TransPerfect for just over 2 years now, and obviously pronouns he, him, his. My current job role is a vendor recruiter, and I'm part of the TransPerfect London office, as you heard Tavi say, or Tabitha say. Yeah, I want to kind of take you back and where my journey went from. So I was currently at university or college, as they say in America, and it was essential to get a work internship as part of my 4-year undergraduate degree. So the reason for this was due to gaining experience in an office in order to boost my employability prospect when I actually leave and graduate. So essentially, I didn't have much of a clue about what kind of job I wanted to go into, where can I start searching from. So I kind of wanted a job in the field that would kind of boost my strongest skills and aspects. So, and I was thinking as well, where's the best place to start from to search for a job? And that would actually, at the time, because this is going back 2 years, because it was quite competitive at the time, where it essentially is the best place for me to apply for. So I wanted to gain some office experience in a job that I would enjoy, of course, in terms of the company culture that was relevant to my undergraduate degree in business and management. And also that factors in my previous part-time work experience, and that enhanced my obviously strongest work traits and key skills. So I started off using my internship websites that my university offered, or college, that majority of students were using, which were provided by the university. And I must have applied to at least 100 companies, if not more. And at times, obviously I tried to make them, when it came to the application stage and obviously final stages of interviews, I made the mistake of trying to sound smart and not being honest or anything. I just thought I want to give them the answer that they want to hear, which was not the right way to go. So obviously, after failing a few times, not getting through the final hurdle, I asked my university for help and guidance and improvements. Eventually, using their website, they pointed me in the direction of TransPerfect. So essentially, it was the initial application stage, getting through that. And this time when I got to the final interview stage, I was successful because I was honest, I was true to myself, and I really stated to the interviewer what I can bring to the company in terms of my strongest skills, my confidence, how I can fit in a team dynamic, and the TransPerfect culture. So I stated exactly what I could contribute to the team, and eventually I got the call later on saying I've got the internship position. So I was really obviously happy about that, saying it really worked, like the guidance from my university and how to apply for a job. It's literally college or university, they know exactly what they're talking about. So it's best to obviously listen to them. So obviously from there, I stayed on, and I was actually so good in the role that I ended up working part-time during my final year of college, university. And, I really excelled and went above and beyond. It's a bit cliche, but for me, it actually was the case. And I actually really enjoyed the work environment at TransPerfect. And fast forward to, I guess, 2 years now. And obviously, now having graduated from Aston University, which is in Birmingham, which is where my university's at, I've graduated with a first class honours. And it sounds a bit cliche, but I owe a lot of my success to TransPerfect because my placement year internship year was so successful. It was, taught me all these new skills that I can apply to final year, and this actually boosted my grade in the long term. And I've now just started a full-time graduate position on a nice salary, and obviously, I've got a lot of connections in TransPerfect. So I'm happy to be here, and it's all down to searching for the right job and my university guidance. And that's my university story, or job search story. Thanks.
Awesome. Megan, we'll give it over to you now.
Can you all hear me? Okay, good. I was having audio issues earlier. So my name is Megan Kragel. I go by she and her. I am the Senior Vendor Relations Manager here at TransPerfect. And how I got into this industry and really my jobs was a happy little accident thanks to the movie The Interpreter. Um, so I had always wanted to be a paleontologist and then found out that that is probably not the career path I wanted to do in careers class in high school. And the movie The Interpreter with Nicole Kidman came out and I loved it. And I said, that's the industry I want to go into. So at that point, I had already had a whole bunch of Spanish lessons. I'm a German heritage speaker. And so I said, I'm going to go and study another foreign language. So I started with Polish. And then when it came time to pick degrees, I knew I wanted to get a history degree, but also a foreign language degree. And really, the only way that I can explain how I have a degree in Russian and Russian studies is my mom handed me one of the guidebooks for Indiana University and said, okay, you haven't learned Arabic, Chinese, or Russian, pick one and get a degree in it. So I chose Russian, majored in it, and then had these degrees, couldn't get a job, was working back at the grocery store back home that I've been in since high school. And so I started actually applying for internships then. I did 2 internships at the same time, one for a translation company down in South Carolina, and one for the International Ice Hockey Federation, translating Russian into English hockey texts. So by doing both of those internships at the same time, I was getting both a translator view of the industry, as well as training and cross-training in marketing, writing journalistic articles on the industry, a sales perspective. And then what I also happily accident-like got into as well was the recruitment aspect, which I picked up relatively quickly because I used skills in an elective class that I had used through a former CIA intel officer about how to recruit someone through the history of the CIA. Applied those skills, was an absolute natural at it. Took those internships, put them on my resume, started applying for more jobs, got a job at a company out in Connecticut. Worked there for 7 years, specializing in life sciences and medical translation work, and then just really wanted to change. And so I had heard of TransPerfect, had heard a whole bunch of really good things, and made the switch over about a year ago. And so now here I am.
Awesome. And Crystal, can we hear a little bit about your story? I think you're still muted. So bottom left.
There we go. Hey everyone, I am actually right here in San Juan, Puerto Rico. This is where I am. This is the newest office for TransPerfect. So my story, I moved from Puerto Rico to Rhode Island to go to school, and I graduated from international economics and marketing in French. That's a lot of things together, but I knew I wanted to come back home and get a career started here. And my story is a little bit different because I say that TransPerfect found me. In a way, this is a good tip, I always kept my LinkedIn profile very active and very updated. So I was working for a wealth management company, doing some legal work. Anyways, the thing is that they scouted me through LinkedIn and I was like, wow, this sounds like my perfect fit. And then I did 3 interviews, 2 in person. I met my direct manager, and about a month later, I got the job, and it was, I think, the best decision. And, I was like in the right place at the right time. And right now I'm a project manager here, and I cannot, be happier. I actually interned when I was in college. I interned for a retail management company. I also did a military company doing contracts. And that whole experience gave me like that big business, global business aspect that I wanted to have. And I think me being bilingual and also studying business and my experience led me to them picking me. And then I was very happy to be in this. It's like, well, at least here in Puerto Rico, we get many American companies, but we don't get things like this. So I feel very proud and very grateful for what I have right now.
Awesome, thanks, Crystal. We'll pass it over to Tim to share a little bit about your story.
Sure. Tim Swadek, he, him pronouns. I'm based out of the New York City office. I've been with the company for 6 years now. I'm a department manager in production. When I was in college, I played baseball. For most of my life, I thought that I was going to be a baseball player, but you know, as I'm sure any former athlete realizes, you know, those dreams run up. So, you know, really didn't have any sort of career path. Majored in communications, but didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do with my life. And also kind of unique is I just really didn't have any sort of work experience in terms of internships. Throughout college, I was playing baseball in the summer. So, you know, and really with baseball, it's a fall season. Even though we're not playing, there's practices every day a week pretty much. So really no time for any work experience or internships unless you want to go above and beyond. So, you know, once I graduated, you know, wanted to give myself a little break, so didn't dive into the interview process immediately. And I regretted that a little bit because I wasn't getting great interviews, or at least the ones that I was getting was going on, and didn't really love the job and just could kind of get a feel that it wasn't a great fit for me. But I was glad that I took those interviews because that was great practice. I really didn't have any exposure doing interviews. So even though I knew right away I didn't want to do that, it was still great experience. So at that point, I kind of turned to my alumni network. And really, I knew that my resume needed some touching up, and I knew that we had a job portal that I just hadn't accessed before. And so my college was great. I mean, I came in, this was a couple months after I graduated. So just knowing that I could go in and sit down with somebody for 2 hours, worked on my resume. I think I only applied to maybe like 3 or 4 jobs, and TransPerfect was one of them. And really it clicked. And in that interview, it's my same boss 6 years later who interviewed me. So just right away, just from talking to him, it felt like I was talking to a friend at the end of it, you know, and that felt great. And that was what, you know, even though I didn't really know much about translation or the translation industry, I knew I wanted to be on a team. I knew I wanted to be a leader from my sports background. And I was interested in technology and kind of just communicating and learning new things. So this felt like a good fit for me.
Great. Thanks so much, Tim. We'll pass it over to Lexi.
Thanks, Tavi. Can you guys hear me okay? So actually, I didn't find TransPerfect. They found me. I was never 100% sure if it was through Monster or LinkedIn, but I do remember the process of putting out like a ton of resumes. Also niche resumes. Make sure you change your resume for like every job you apply for if you think that it's relevant. Because I remember the resume they printed out during my initial interview was like one that I had just been like, oh, this is the thing. Let's do this for all communication. And my background is in communications and in English. I've also worked for TransPerfect for almost 6 years, and my pronouns are she, her, we. So when I did get the initial call, I was like, I don't remember applying for this job, but here's an opportunity because I didn't have a job at the time. I had been let go from like a temporary situation. First interview went really great. I loved seeing, you know, the office, meeting everybody. Everybody was super friendly, nice, and I was just sure I was going to get it. However, my recruiter was like, you know, we need some time. We'll talk to you later. I consistently followed up emails, like actual thank you cards that you send in the mail, asking questions, like just saying like, whatever you do need from me, who do you need me to meet with? I'm available 24/7, questions, anything. I was available for it. And during my final round of interviews, my grandfather passed away. And so it became a conflict finding time to continue following up and being there for my family. And I remember the exact reason I got this job is because my final interview I had to take before Zoom was cool, had to take it on the internet. And my interviewer, who's now a VP, asked me, what do you do when everything goes wrong? Because in professional situations, you just have to figure it out. You just have to like do the job. You're getting paid, somebody's client or whatever's on the line, you got to do it. And that was basically my answer to my interview. I was like, you know what, that's my life right now. I don't actually want to be in this interview, but I know I can do this job and I know I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And that is how you keep moving. That's how life works. You just keep moving and keep, you know, staying strong. And so I actually think that between that final interview, going to my grandfather's funeral, and then getting home that same day, I had an acceptance offer, and it was pretty much a Sunday, which is like unheard of. But they knew that I was going to take it seriously and that I wanted this job. and that even if I wasn't sure about that career path, that I was going to make it work. And it's 6 years later, and I love every experience I've ever had with this company, and it's just like a really great fit. And so, yeah, I think it all just really worked out, and you have to trust the process, continue following up, and be confident in what you're applying for.
Awesome. Thanks, Lexi. So I'm actually going to share a little bit about my experience before I pass it over to Kevin. So as I said earlier, I'm Tavi. I use she, her, or they, them. I've been with TransPerfect for 8 years. I went to Sarah Lawrence College, which is a very small college. And I honestly chose the college because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I knew that I would just graduate with a liberal arts degree and that I'd be able to apply it in some way. And I remember even through senior year of college, sitting at my various jobs. I was a bartender and I worked for our phone-a-thon, calling alumni and asking for money. And I remember imagining like, well, I'm gonna sit in an office presumably, but what else? So I actually made a list of things that I thought made me unique. And I tried to take a look at like LinkedIn and Monster and some of those types of sites. And I tried to build kind of keywords based off of that. So I knew that one of the things that I enjoyed was translation. I speak German. That was one of those things that was unique. And so I think I Googled the words be a translator, and I went to every translation company and I applied to their translation jobs or their proofreading jobs, whether I was qualified or not. TransPerfect told on their site said that you needed 3 to 10 years of experience, I think. And I didn't have experience, but I applied anyway. As a result, a recruiter called me and they said, hey, you're definitely not qualified for this particular position. However, we have a different position that we think might interest you. And because I was really uncertain about what I ultimately wanted, I went ahead and took a chance. And that position ultimately led me down a whole long path of different positions, including translation, that kind of helped me discover what interests me. So I'm going to pass it over to Kevin. If you all have questions, feel free to ask them as we're going through as well.
Hey everybody, my name is Kevin Kelly. I'm based in New York City with TransPerfect. I've been with the company for a little over 10 years, and I use the pronouns he and him. So I'm not all that dissimilar from some of our other panelists today where, you know, I wish I could say that I had a strategy for like how to find a job coming out of school. I definitely did not. I think one of the commonly understood challenges that are represented from going to a liberal arts school and having a liberal arts major is that it is very difficult sometimes to translate that education, pun intended, a translation company, yeah, thanks Amanda. It's difficult to translate your education into an actual career. You know, sitting in school doing more critical and analytical thinking and like a philosophy class doesn't necessarily mean how am I going to find a job other than being, you know, a philosophy professor at some point. And so that definitely was a very real reality for me as a political science and Middle East studies major. But I think what I found when I reflect back on how my career after school sort of developed, one of the common themes about how I landed myself ultimately at TransPerfect and my other job before this was that it really reflects my life path has really like reflected my passions that drove me in the direction that I ultimately landed. When I was in high school, we had a free newspaper. I used to pick it up every morning and read it. And I naturally found myself gravitating towards Middle East and North Africa topics. And it occurred to me when I went to college that like, oh, you know, I'm not only interested in politics, but that international aspect is really interesting to me. And so I ended up deciding to double major. And I found out while I was double majoring that I could get credit towards my double major if I took Arabic. And I'd be lying if I said I had this natural passion for language. I took Latin and ancient Greek in high school, and it was cool because we, you know, would translate like the Gaelic Wars, and it was like fun for a guy in high school to like translate something like that instead of the classics, you know. and so things just sort of evolved. I was decent at the Arabic. I wasn't great, but I really loved it, and it was really cool, and it was a very interesting culture dimension. But all throughout college, outside of classes, I was also very involved in social justice issues and community service program, with a lot of my time dedicated to that outside of classes. And so coming right out of college, I moved back to my hometown of Buffalo, and I got a job with our Department of Social Services in the county there, because I thought that that was something that, you know, I was really passionate about in college, and why wouldn't I be passionate about that in life? But after a year in that job, it wasn't exactly what I thought I would want in the long term of my career. And so I started thinking that, you know, I'm going to have to sort of find a way to pivot out of this. Like, what can I possibly do? And again, just sort of now, I don't think I made this conscious decision at the time, but thinking back, was that I really kind of found myself in the end following what those passions were. So I went on a career services website through the college that I went to, and I just typed in Arabic, and then TransPerfect popped up, and here I am 10 years later. And I don't think, before I applied to the company, I didn't even know that the language services industry existed, let alone that I wanted a job in it. But I think reflecting on what I was passionate about and what kept my interest most of the time ended up guiding me through different stages of my career to ultimately land it where I'm the happiest and where I'm most effective, and that reflect the skills that I've really developed over my life in education. So a little bit about my story and how I came to be here 10 years later.
Thanks, Kevin. So we'll pause for some questions from our audience, and then we have more content for you all if you don't have a lot of questions, but if you do, that's great too. So our first question is from Juan, and I'm going to actually ask it to Amber, who's our talent management specialist. Amber, Juan wants to know, how do I apply for a job? And you're muted, my dear.
That's why I work in recruitment and not IT. In order to apply for a job, I would say first you have to have a lot of documents ready to make the process as smooth as possible. So you're gonna want your resume all set and ready to go, a cover letter potentially, your LinkedIn profile. So those three things. And then if, in addition to those, you should also have some sort of typed up version of your job history, your educational history, have all of those details on hand so that when you go to fill out applications online, you're not like, especially when you get to like my age and you're like, wait, what day did I graduate college? Because those questions are often asked and I'm like, what? Like, I don't even remember. So you want to have a lot of that information written down and keep it in a running, living document that you can refer back to. And then you find a job that you're interested in. I would say check the qualifications, make sure that you at least meet some of them. A lot of times we're seeing issues with people just randomly like clicking and applying, especially with like easy apply links. And it makes it very difficult for recruiters to get to candidates who are actually qualified for the position. So you want to make sure that you're focusing your job search on positions you're interested in and qualified for. So read through the job description and then follow the link to apply. And typically they're fairly self-explanatory. My partner actually just went through the job search, and it's kind of a spectrum in how different applications work. So some you literally just upload your resume and they're like, cool, thanks, have a good day. And it ranges all the way to like, oh, you've already uploaded your resume. Now please type every job you've ever had and the specific dates and when you, like your mother's cat's maiden name. And you have to kind of run this whole like gamut. So that's why it's important to have all the information already ready, so that whatever you're asked, you can easily access that information. So I would say, you know, in order to apply for a job, it's just being prepared, having those documents ready, and then going through the process. And feel free to reach out to the company's HR department if there's any issues with the application or you don't understand some questions. It's better to like wait and get an answer than to leave something blank that was actually super important for the company to know.
Great, that's super helpful. Thanks, Amber. So this one is kind of to everyone, but who helped and guided you to take initiative or first steps in searching for a job? Was it guidance from a family member? Was it someone in your college career office or someone else? Lexi, I see a hand up.
Yeah. So I would actually say my family was a really big support. A lot of them work in different fields, from like the military to the government, or education to translation. But when I was still in school, I was always in the career center. Like, I was that kid that you just couldn't get rid of. Like, any question I had, I made a scheduled appointment, and they were like, "You're gonna have to wait." And I was like, "I'll wait. My next class is not for like 45 minutes. I'll be here." And then in all the internships I have, they usually tell you, if you ever need anything or ever have any questions, feel free to follow up. I followed up. You might be considered the most annoying person in the room, but you're probably going to be the first person to get a job. So if anybody ever offers you a resource, or there's a free resource, your local library, a family member, a mentor, church member, whatever your network is, keep tapping into that network, because somebody's going to have the answer that's going to land you a job.
Awesome. Thanks, Lexi. Anyone have anything they want to add?
Kind of hard to follow that, because I feel like that was an excellent answer. But I would say, as somebody who actually didn't take full advantage of the career opportunities at school, for me, it was more that network that I had within maybe the 1 to 3 years older than me. So when I was in college, I was part of a sorority, and I had some local jobs on campus and other types of organizations that I was connected to. And I found it really helpful, and it tied into how I got my job here, to leverage people's experience that had just gone through it. So talking to those people that I had met, become friends with, were colleagues with, who just went through the process over the last year or two and were now settled into roles, it helped me understand what the experience was like for them and what worked and didn't work. And at the same time, that byproduct of, okay, what are they doing now? Do they like the company that they work for? You know, do they have any regrets around that? And I think just having that connection to people who just went through it, particularly at a time like now, where obviously there are all different types of challenges that are coming up in 2020. So somebody's experience from 10 years ago may be very different from what it is now. So just kind of keeping within that recent experience range really helped me.
Awesome. That's super helpful, because I wish I would have thought to talk to more of my peers, to talk to the friends that were a couple of years older. Because part of my struggle was, I actually don't feel like I had someone who helped or guided me through finding a job. A lot of it was just cold applying really diligently on my end. So it's definitely an interesting one. Does anyone else have any further questions? Anything else you want to know about? Great. Well, we have two options, so I'm going to pull the audience a little bit and see what seems most useful for you guys. So we have a PowerPoint that lists some of the questions you might want to consider asking yourselves if you're trying to figure out where you fit in and what you'd like to do. Alternatively, Amber can take us through what it would look like to apply for a job through our portal. So I'll give you guys 2 minutes to let me know which of the two you prefer. You can type it on into the chat or Q&A. All right, give you a second. Not seeing any strong preferences here. So let's go through some of those questions. Kevin, I'm going to pass it over to you, and you'll be able to share your screen.
All right. Can we see me?
We can see you.
Excellent, excellent. You can see the screen, right? Not just me. Okay. So you guys heard kind of like a bunch of our stories, you know, how to find a job, and a little bit of advice that I think we can kind of compile together through kind of like sharing what our own experiences were, we thought would be a little bit helpful to people. You know, there's going to be some obvious things and then some not so obvious. And I think what we really wanted to be able to focus on are some of the less obvious strategies when you're kind of starting that job search, because anybody can kind of Google, like, you know, how do I find a job, or what am I looking for, or how do I figure out, you know, what it is that I want to do. And, you know, there's going to be unlimited articles, and it's not that those aren't helpful, but I think some of the more unorthodox solution or ideas are kind of what we wanted to be able to put out in front of people today. But, you know, we don't want to miss that there are some fairly obvious things there. We'll go through some of these, but the ones we won't really touch on are social media. That's obviously plays a huge role in the job search these days. Almost every company is present there, and when they're recruiting, they put a big focus on it. Job listing sites like Monster and LinkedIn and Craigslist, believe it or not, if you didn't know, that is a huge source of job postings. And then we'll talk a little bit more about and elaborate on like high school and college programs, location-based thoughts, values of various companies, and some of the passions. So a lot of the opportunities that are going to be available in both high school and college programs, you won't necessarily have all these, but there's some of the things that you'd expect to see in a lot of colleges across the US. Some schools have a lot more robust resources to create premier job placement opportunities for students. It's something that when you're evaluating a college is something that you probably really want to look closely at. But for others, you know, it requires more effort on the part of the student themselves to chart a path in their career. So all these opportunities, things like internships, on-campus research programs, job shadowing, alumni networks, mentoring programs, job placement programs, job posting boards, you know, they're all valuable resources that, you know, at face value are pretty obvious, but the underlying message here is that it really gives you an opportunity by combining a lot of these together to experience things through trial and error. It oftentimes can be just as important to know what you don't want to do. And the only way to do that is to find out through trying different things out. So experience in different work environments can definitely begin to craft an image of what's important, not just for the job that you do, but the type of company culture and work style that you're looking for at your ultimate job. So each time that you're able to put yourself in a position of even doing job shadowing just for a day, you can learn things like what type of an office is it, or maybe you don't want to work in an office. Maybe it's, you know, more of like an outdoor type of thing, or they change location all the time. What type of work environment you prefer, what the dynamic is from team or individual work settings, or even how many people work at the company. That's something that I've heard a lot is, you know, some people are really comfortable working at a company that has 4,000 employees. Some people want 20. You don't really know those things until you start kind of putting yourself out there and taking advantage of different opportunities that are presented in your different school, whether it be high school or college and whatever programs that you have available here, to really start to take advantage of those things. So taking advantage of them in a wide range of resources and not focusing on just one, where focusing on one might not add up to all that much, but focusing on more areas, like taking a sampling of, you know, 4 or 5 opportunities that you see listed here, can help kind of create a much more holistic picture of what you're going to look for when you start to combine these things together. So, you know, it might seem fairly obvious. Yeah, there's these programs, but there's also, I think, the more underlying message of, you know, use them as an opportunity to test things out, because you don't really have any skin in the game at that point. You're really just trying to figure out what works for you and learn anything that you can from it. Even if you learn that you don't want to do that at all, you know, that's just as valuable. The next thing is location. You know, asking yourself some questions. Where do I want to live? What type of companies are most prevalent in a particular location, whether that's a city or elsewhere? what industries are present in that location, not just what companies, and what kind of jobs might be specific to that. So knowing where you want to work in your career can oftentimes be a really strong starting point, especially if you have a strong opinion on it. So for example, if you say to yourself that I've always wanted to live somewhere like Charlotte, North Carolina, when you start to dig in and look at what type of companies make their home there, you'd find that there's a huge banking industry. So once you learn this, you might find that you can dig a little bit further into what types of jobs or opportunities exist in the banking industry, and do any of those appeal to you. And that can be an opportunity to find something that you enjoy, and also give you the opportunity to kind of accomplish the goal of living in a specific place. On the opposite end, if you've lived in a big city all your life and you're looking to move out of a city, you might think to yourself, you know, what type of jobs do people do if they live in a small town or a small city of, like, let's say 100,000 people? And you might end up finding, like, hey, a veterinary assistant could be a reasonable path to accomplish that goal. So sometimes focusing on location can kind of help frame what exists there, and then you can kind of dig a little bit more into greater detail on that. So the next thing is,
Evan,
yes.
As a heads up, we're running tight on time, so we should possibly move through these a little bit quickly, but we can also make this available to everyone after the fact so that they can look through it as a handout and ask themselves some of these questions. So thank you, I appreciate it. Do you want to finish talking about values?
Sure. So
Great.
I think just real quick, as Tavi indicated, some of the questions you can ask yourself is, you know, for the eventual company that you want to be looking at or searching for, is diversity important to you? Do you want to have an impact on social justice issues? Is a woman-owned company an important factor? How much focus do you want to give to work-life balance? Identifying what values are important to you and seeking out companies that mirror those is another way that can kind of guide you a little bit in the job search. And then lastly, passions. I think this slide in particular, you know, sort of speaks to some of my experience after I talked about, is just focus on, you know, take a step back from thinking, you know, what is the job? What is the job? How am I going to start a career? And just think, what are my experiences of, like, what I'm most interested in? When I'm doing X, Y, or Z, I completely lose track of time and I zone out. When I pick up a book, or I pick up a magazine, or I look at a website, like, what type of articles do I gravitate towards? And starting to think like that can start moving you in a direction of paying attention to, yeah, maybe something gets mentioned here when I'm reading about something I feel really passionate about. And it can kind of help move you in that direction, which I guess rounds out the last point, which is just follow your gut. You know, you don't need to overthink it. It's okay to fail, which is probably a whole session in and of itself. But following your gut and, you know, taking the chance and taking any opportunity that comes your way to try something out is ultimately going to get you where you want to go, whether you realize it at the time or not.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to you, Kev. Great. Well, that's all we have for you all today. It's been so wonderful getting to chat with you all. Thank you for your questions. They were really good ones, and I appreciate them. And I hope you all have great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.